Hi, my name's Wendy Bailey, and this is for speech Monday night, uh, James Smith's class, the best class. My speech tonight is going to be on the right to live or die, in particular breast cancer. Having someone else pull your plug, I don't think so. Who are we to judge on what somebody decides to do with their life? Somebody's suffering. It's their own life. It's their own decision. I'm a firm believer in that it's a choice for what you want to do. A person might answer this question differently if they were ever put in a situation where they witnessed or are witnessing a loved one go through a horrible illness, which happened to me when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was always a firm believer in assisted suicide because I do believe that is the decision, but it didn't affect me personally as much until I watched my mom go through it. Breast cancer affects 1 in 8 women in the United States. It's the death rate is more than any other cancer except lung cancer. It doesn't care what color you are. Doesn't care what you do for a living. Doesn't care how much money you have. It affects everybody in different ways. And it just doesn't matter. It's not it's not particular. It just hits anybody at any time. The initial shock of hearing the word cancer, the emotional, physical, and mental toll it takes on the person who has it and the family members who are there to support and take care of that person, and what legal issues happen if they want assisted suicide. The journey began in 2006 when my mom was diagnosed with invasive lobular carcinoma, which only 10% of women get. It was 8 centimeters, and which was huge, and she had had it for several years, and she had had a clean mammogram 5 months earlier. So the initial shock in the doctor's office, it was just like we were just in a cloud and a haze. We didn't know what was going on, and she had to have immediate surgery, a mastectomy, and it did affect her lymph nodes. Right after the surgery, a couple of weeks later, they began her on chemo treatments, which they had inserted a port into her chest. And she went to chemo once a week for 3 hours a day, once a week. And watching her sit in that chair beside her, fighting for it, just looking at what the chemo did to her body, robbed her of her energy and made her sick. And she wanted to go do things. She never liked to sit at home, but it was just so hard to watch that chemo work its way around her body. After the chemo was completed, she went back and she was clear, and she was in remission for a year. A year later, it came back, and it went all over. She had her spleen removed. She was diagnosed with a blood disorder, and her white blood cell count was really low, which she couldn't have chemo treatments with white blood cell counts very low because of your immune system. She was in horrible pain, and she just didn't want to fight anymore. She was tired, and there were several times where she tell us she was ready to go home. She was sad to leave us, behind, but she was ready to go home, and she didn't want to suffer anymore, and she didn't want us to watch her suffer. And so the doctor initially gave her 2 months and sent her home, and me and my grandmother sat with her, and she went into a coma, and for 4 days she laid there as me and my grandmother watched her 24/7. And it was very hard to watch somebody lay there and knowing that they're slowly dying and there was nothing that you could do, and you wanted it to end quickly. And I know there were times where I asked God to please take her, and then there were other times where it's like I don't want her to go. And but the decision of, if she wanted help assisting it, I did question it sitting there, going, why can they just not, give her something to just ease the suffering? Basically, the cancer, it pretty much destroyed her body, which is what it does. The white blood cell count, was low, and there toward the end, her organs just started shutting down. And basically, she died 4 days later, and after her organs had shut down. And this, just sitting there thinking about that, brought to my mind the legal ramifications of what would happen if somebody wanted a family member to assist them with their suicide? You know, I know some people think it's, morally wrong, it's murder, it's, if it's suicide, you go to hell. And, is it their decision to decide, and why should the courts decide? And if it is, if it's just their decision, then nobody else should intervene. Basically, I saw how cancer robbed my mom of her energy. Why should anybody care about anything? It does happen to a lot of people, and we as human beings are compassionate, and at the same time saying, oh, that happens to other people, but not me. I was one of those people. But when it directly affects you, you become an activist. You just throw your whole body into it, your whole self, because it's your loved one, and especially somebody as close as my mom. I saw how devastated she was when that cancer just took her body, and nobody should have to go live through that. I do walks in her memory. I do, all types of breast cancer functions, because that's my way of paying tribute to her. But I think everybody at some point is affected, no matter what disease it is. If it's cancer, if somebody dies in a car wreck, when it affects you, it's just something that's just so personal that, you just can't imagine, not doing something. And so, basically that's, in the end, she went home, and she was done. Her time here was done. And basically, if it came down to the point where it was assisted, I did sit there and ask if I could do it. And I think that's a question that a lot of people need to ask themselves. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.